And MJ said he still hates the bad boy Pistons to this day. It led to him to get in the weight room, put on size, etc. Max, did Jordan need those Pistons to become the greatest player of all time?
No. And this narrative about the Pistons, it just doesn't line up with the facts. Look, the Pistons were a dominant team at the time, and Jordan overcoming them and the Bulls overcoming them, that was a thing for sure. I'm sure it made them better in some way. Had it not been the Pistons, it would have been another obstacle. Pistons beat the hell out of Jordan. I mean, the refs let him get away with it back then and fouled him a million times on the way to the basket every time, and the doc goes over it. But this idea that Jordan had to overcome the Pistons and learn how to win, it doesn't line up with the facts. Guys, I say this every time the topic comes up. Michael Jordan never played with a single other All-Star. That's the only reason he hadn't already won championships, as in multiple championships. He was the best player who ever lived by the time he got back from injury in his second season and gave the Celtics 63 at Boston Garden. Larry Bird knew it when he saw it. The next year, Jordan averaged 37. The next year, he averaged 32, 8, and 8. And the year in question, the first year they took the Pistons 7 games, was the first time Jordan played with another All-Star. It was an ascending Scottie Pippen, who still wasn't in his prime. You could check all the advanced numbers. You could look at the eyeball test talking. He was on his way up still, but he made an All-Star team. So what happened? The first time Jordan played with a single other All-Star who was not even in his prime yet. They took the Pistons 7 games. Oh, well, they lost. Yeah, because Pippen, the All-Star, had a migraine. So basically, Jordan was without another All-Star again, which is the only reason he didn't win the finals that season. So, and then after that, Pippen's an All-Star, reaches his prime. Jordan never again doesn't win the finals in under 7 games. Had it not been the Pistons, it would have been another obstacle. Stephen A., even when they talk about he had to learn how to win, I might not lead the league in scoring this year. I think this was 89-90, right, going into that season. He did lead the league in scoring. He dropped about 33 points a game with 3 steals, 6 boards, 7 assists, whatever it was, something like that. And he shot 54% from the field. So I understand why the story with Jordan is more dramatic when you make it seem like, well, he had to overcome this insurmountable obstacle, but he somehow got over it. Or some kind of story like that. Well, he had to learn how to win. He couldn't score as much. He scored as much as he ever did. He was already good enough to win a championship with even a little bit of help. That's the truth. He didn't need the Pistons to be the GOAT.
Well, first of all, you're wrong, and you're wrong in large part due to you. You've given LeBron James credit for learning how to win once he got to Miami. You've given Kawhi Leonard credit for learning how to win by being a San Antonio Spur before he arrived in Toronto with the Raptors and did what he did last year. You can't give credit to those two individuals and then ignore the road that Michael Jordan had to go through, which was the Pistons, in order to get to what to where he got to. That's number one. Number two, rather than leaning on you, I'd rather lean on the expertise of Isiah Thomas, who's a 2-time champion, an all-time 50 greatest player, one of the greatest point guards to ever play the game of basketball, even according to Michael Jordan, who has personally told me over the years that Isiah Thomas is the second greatest point guard in the history of basketball behind Irvin Magic Johnson. And then you also have to take into account what Isiah Thomas himself said on Get Up this morning, and that is this: we were a roadblock, and Jalen Rose highlighted it. If you don't have a true rivalry to go through to really test your mettle, how do you find out who you are, what you're not, and what you need to elevate yourself to in order to become the things that you're looking to become? The Detroit Pistons enabled Michael Jordan to do just that. And number three, I strongly beg to differ that it was a foregone conclusion that if Scottie Pippen didn't have the migraine, that they would have beaten the Pistons. Remember, at the time, the Pistons were the champions. Remember, at the time, that there was a Game 7, which means that with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen healthy, they had lost 3 of the first 6 games of the series, and a Game 7 that particular season was on their home court. Matter of fact, I'm not sure if they were the champions of, I think that's when they won the first championship. I apologize for that. But they were on their home court for a Game 7 to go up against Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. And so I look at it from that perspective, and I say to you, it's not a foregone conclusion they would have lost that game. A matter of fact, a lot of people believe the Pistons would have won that game because it was at the Palace in Auburn Hills as opposed to the United Center or the Chicago Stadium.
Now, by the way, you're right. The Pistons were the defending champs. So, but even if there's no way to prove it one way or another, There's no way to prove it one way or another. I'm not saying no question it's impossible for the Pistons to win that game. I'm just saying, isn't it interesting that Jordan had not played with a single other All-Star? As soon as you give him an All-Star, not a dominant All-Star, just a guy on his way up who made his first All-Star team, there they are in a Game 7 with the Pistons. And my belief is Jordan beats him. I know he didn't shoot well in that game, but that's because he didn't have any help. That Jordan beats him if Pippen is in the game. You can argue otherwise. They were playing the defending champions who would go on to repeat, and at the very least got to a Game 7 where once again Jordan was alone. Then he gets Pippen the following year. Stephen A., they swept them. They swept them. I mean, it was never, whenever
that was
Jordan
that was a year later. That was a year later, and Isiah Thomas was injured. He was playing with one good wrist.
Sure, I understand that. What I'm saying is the facts are as follows. 0 All-Stars doesn't make the finals. Give him an All-Star, takes a defending champion 7 games, then that All-Star basically gets taken away in Game 7, they get eliminated. The next year he gets the All-Star back, who's better than ever. They sweep the Pistons. They destroy everything in their path. They win 6 out of 6 finals, never going to a Game 7. And so the Pistons, do they need the Pistons? Did he needed them to become the GOAT? He didn't need them. They were just the obstacle. It could have been the Celtics. It could have been someone else.
Did you watch the documentary last night? Did you watch the documentary last night? Did you not hear Michael Jordan and everybody talk about how he engaged in lifting weights? Tim Grover, one of the great trainers in NBA history for these basketball players, talked about how Michael Jordan was a different man after the loss in Game 7 of that conference finals, that he hit the weights, how difficult it is to put on weight, to put on muscle when you do so much cardio as a professional basketball player running up and down the court. Michael Jordan wasn't even the same player in 89-90 than he was in 90-91. So you have to take that into consideration as well.